Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I get a chance to work on one that I haven't worked on before, and its owner, Asante from New York, tells me that it's from England. It's a UK import. This is a Okuma RTX II 4000 size. And one of the things that I was grateful for is that he included the schematic diagram that comes with the reel, because, well, even though you think you know the reels, every now and then there's a little twist that might go on, and that schematic diagram there is an excellent backup plan in terms of getting yourself straight if you find that something is, well, out of order or something just doesn't seem right. So we're going to take this reel apart. We're going to show you how to service it, and we're all going to learn from it because, well, I just don't see this reel here in the US. But that doesn't mean it's not available. And actually, you would probably want to find out how he got it. The reel turns nice and smooth and easily. It has a oversized ball type of a handle with the ball bearing in it, and this handle is attached by a screw cap and a through rod that goes through the main gear. Well, while I'm taking off the exterior pieces and parts, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. If you do subscribe to my channel, please use the notification button. That'll let you know where and when I'm posting, and, well, you can see if that's a video that you would enjoy. I work on all kinds of reels. Today we're working on a spinning reel from Okuma. Tomorrow maybe a low-profile baitcaster. The next day maybe a very large saltwater reel. So whatever your interests are, I try to cover them in the channel, and hopefully there'll be some out there that you would like to view. Well, we took the handle off. Now we'll take off the spool. The spool comes off by taking your adjuster knob and turning it in a counterclockwise manner and lifting. This one seems to be pretty much a conventional spool. We have a drag assembly inside the spool and the typical knob up top. I'm just going to set that off to the side for now. And one of the things I want to do is encourage you to have a plan for what you do with the parts that you remove. When you take the parts off, have a system. My system is, well, the big parts go off to the side, and the little parts go into a parts tray. And regardless of what your system is, there's some folks like to line them up on a towel or something in the order that they've taken them off, and that's good. And regardless of what your system is, have one. And then the other thing I would recommend is that you take pictures. If you take pictures along the way, that's going to help you if you get stuck. You'll see the way that they came off, the sequence that they came off, the orientation of the piece and part, and, well, how to put it back together again if you get stuck. Right now I'm a little stuck with these darn spool adjuster washers, but we'll get them off. They fit very tightly onto the axle shaft, and for whatever reason they just, well, they're stubborn and coming off. So that's the second of the three. Manufacturers usually give you 1 to 3 of these. It's to accommodate for the height of the line lay on the spool, and you can use these as adjusters. So that's the third one. And we take the click ratchet off, and as you'll notice, all of those little pieces and parts went into a corner of a parts tray that I use. And the parts tray I use is a fast food tray. Next up, I'm going to remove the screw. That's the tie-down screw for the rotor nut. And then that's probably a 10mm nut, and I can probably reach it with an open-faced wrench. I just noticed on this one that the rotor nut comes off in a clockwise manner. This is what's known as a reverse thread. Normally you would be tightening. In this case, you're loosening. Okay. Well, the rotor nut is off. Now I can remove the rotor. Now, I did an early test on this just to make sure everything's running. Asante said he's had the reel about 3 years. It hasn't been serviced. Everything is running fine. So what I'm going to do here is just use penetrating oil on the seams of the bail, on line roller, and just work it, make sure that it's working fine. There's a little arm down here, a little Z-bar that acts as a trip when it comes up the ramp, and you can put a little oil in there. When you're servicing a reel, you do not need to remove the bail and the bail assembly unless it's not working. And here you'll see the ramp. So the ramp is built into the case. That little bar that you saw goes low, and as you turn the reel, it comes up and snaps the bail back. We have a retention cover here that's holding in the anti-reverse and pinion gear. I'm going to take two of these out, then I'm going to go over to the case. The case is held in by 3 screws. It looks like the screw on the bottom is probably holding this bump guard in, so we'll go there next. When I take the screws out, I want to make sure that they're all the same size. So we have 3 screws here. It looks like we have at least 1 small screw up top. This is a good place for a picture. There is a small screw there, and sometimes there's a small screw on the back side. So just pay attention to that. You're going to need a micro driver to take that small screw out. And I keep all of my tools near at hand, at least the frequently used ones, so that I don't have to put the pieces and parts down and go run for the tool I may need, only to find out that when I come back I've forgotten the orientation or something else has gone amiss. Alright, that's the 4th one. So we've taken out 3 gold ones, those are the lower case, and a silver one, which is the upper case. Let's see if we can get this out now. This would be the bump guard shield. And I think I was probably right there because there's one more. Don't ever pull hard without looking. If you're stuck, go back and check. Because in this case, we have another screw holding the top end of that bump guard on, and if you just thought maybe it was stuck and you applied some pressure and some force, well, it wouldn't end well. I've changed over to a different micro driver to try and get this one. It's hard here because you can't see the slots for the screws. There we go. So I went to a flat driver for that. And now you can see on this one that there is a studded section there which is going to control. And then what I like to do with a lot of these, particularly something like this, I want to put that screw right back in there. You saw me do that with the handle. I'm doing it here with the other screw, just so I don't lose it, particularly a small one like this. It's easy for that thing to bounce around in your parts tray or something and get lost. You can see I did it on the handle as well. Alright, with that out of the way, we should be able to remove the case. And we'll get our first look inside the reel. It's supposedly a 8-ball bearing reel. I would say one is on the handle, one is on the line guide. That would be 2. Here's 3. And I never quite make it all the way with these the counts. And it also looks like it should be attached in the traditional method down here with the line guide once we get through it. And I would say that this is probably evidence that the reel has not been serviced in a while. Take your pictures. There is a snap spring right here. It's a V-shaped spring. If you don't pay attention, it may pop out on you. So just be aware of that. And also notice that the case is a plastic case. For those of you considering buying the reel, if the reel is available, that's the material this is made out of. Okay, well, we're going to come up a little bit more now. We're going to remove the screw that holds the axle shaft to the crosswind block in its own little place. Hold your crosswind block. You should be able to pull up and out on the axle shaft. clean the axle shaft off. I'm using a paper towel just to wipe it down. If you found any irregularities in here, if it was rough, if it was pitted, if it had corrosion on it, then use something like a little piece of steel wool to help remove some of the debris. Alright, with that done, I'm going to remove the main gear. We've got a bearing on the back, a bearing on the front. And what we have on this one, interestingly enough, is that oscillation, elliptical oscillation on the reel. Now that one is something that is pretty unusual. Probably comes to the Okuma. I've seen them a lot on Okuma. There is a reference mark right here on the face. Sometimes you can see it in red. Sometimes it's just like this one, plain. You're going to get a reference mark, and there better be a reference mark on the back here. Usually you can see a red dot in there. We'll figure it out. I think it's right, maybe right there. Yeah, that could be it right there. Well, at any rate, sometimes you have to play around with it, but in the past, the ones that I've seen have had the little red dot on the inside. But we'll go work on that in a moment. Let's take the other piece of this out, and then we'll go up top and just check on that anti-reverse portion. One of the things that you want to do with this reel is you want to take the reel apart, inspect all the pieces and parts, clean all the pieces and parts, and then re-lube and reassemble. That's pretty much a basis of all of these. Again, there's a spring here. Just be aware of it. That spring can pop and go flying. Well, while I'm doing some of the base cleanup, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel, if you want to leave those questions in the comments section, I will try to answer those for you. Maybe you're working on the reel, maybe you're working on a different reel and you're stuck. Maybe you're hoping for a little guidance in terms of problem diagnosis. Just leave those in the comments section. It doesn't have to be on this reel, and I will try to answer those for you. Well, I just took the third of those 3 screws out. There's a collar, as I mentioned. There's a little tie down first. Notice on that tie down there is an extra hole and there is a stud here, so that'll help you align that properly. This can come off. And then there's one of these painful kind of springs here that holds the anti-reverse. So I'm going to hold that anti-reverse so that I don't shoot that spring. And we'll move it up and out of the way so that we can lift the assembly. That's a little spring there. Just be careful not to lose it. And then your whole assembly should come out. Alright, we have the whole case out now, so it's time to do some cleaning. I'm going to bring a paper towel underneath so that, like when I flush, I don't get the dirt all over my bench. I'm using a penetrating oil as a degreaser. And it looks like most of the grease in this reel is just evaporated, and that makes sense. If it's been about 3 years since it's serviced, a lot of those greases and oils will just go away. Some of them will be spun out of where they belong. Centrifugal force will do that. And some of them just evaporate. Regardless, you need to take the time to do the cleaning. You don't want that old grease hanging around inside your case, possibly carrying debris and having that work against you. When you put the new grease in, it becomes abrasive and starts wearing down the pieces and parts. Alright, well, that case is pretty clean there. So let's go over to the assembly. This is really where I want to get to, just that. It's a bearing. The rest of that's your anti-reverse clutch. You don't have to disturb that. You do need to remember we have that spring on there, and you need to be careful with that spring because it will shoot just like the other pieces. And on the back side of this, we want to clean the pinion gear. I just had a little bit of an issue with a Penn Battle that has a similar override spring on it. It took me almost a half an hour to get that spring back on, I dropped it several times, went through panic modes. It was landed right on my bench, but that spring is so small that you need to take care on that one. Okay, we've done that. Let's get our oiler. Our oil the bearing. We can go ahead and reseat now these pieces and kind of get that nervousness out of our way here. There's a piece here that's going to go through that slot. Just like that. You need to make sure that your pieces in here go into the 4 slots inside the case, and that tongue from your override is in here. Bring that over to this side. And I think I'm going to take my glove off for this. I use a glove to protect my hands from all of the greases and that I take out, but sometimes, well, it just gets a little dicey and you want more control. So we're going to see what we can do here. I'm holding that spring. I want to advance the piece so that it's all the way to the back. That will be less tension on the spring to reset it on that post. And I'm going to use a little pick here. This is where I got hung up with that pen battle. I just kept spending way too much time kind of going around getting it right without risking shooting the darn thing. And a friend of mine who talked to me early on when I was starting reel repair said you really need two pieces of equipment that they don't sell in the stores. You need a sense of humor and a lot of patience. And this is one of those that kind of puts that to the test. I often wonder how they do this in the plants when they're building these things, because this takes me a little while. I've got it now. You can see the spring is loaded now. Just bring it down. That's the way the spring goes. But I can't imagine that that's an efficient way to do that. All right, well, you're going to notice there's one notch in this carrier. That's going to make sure that you clear this stud here. Go back to your pictures if you were wondering. Bring that over and seat that. Then there's the 2 shim washers that go on top of that. Then we can close this up so that we don't worry. Here's your cap. It has the extra stud in it. So that goes over to this side for alignment. Same thing now with the cover plate. Just checking to see if one of them might have had a taper in it. And now we can take those 3 screws that were holding that cover plate on and put that back. I like to work in sub-assemblies on reels like this. It just kind of keeps you organized in terms of the approach. And also you don't wind up with parts everywhere and, well, your mind racing everywhere as well, trying to remember what goes where. Okay, that's 1, this is 2, and the other will be 3. It says 8 ball bearings. I'm not quite sure where these other ball bearings are. We've seen the 3 that matter. Call the anti-reverse clutch 4. And well, the rest of them I'm not quite sure. Okay, we're going to put that glove back on because I do have some work now with the greasing up of the pieces and the cleaning of the pieces. So again, we're working on getting some of these things out of the way. Check your gears. This is the oscillation gear. Again, we're going to have some reference points on here. That's the one that I'm concerned about right there, the small one. Make sure it's clean. Check the teeth. And then this gear gets grease all around. It gets grease on the teeth. It gets grease into the backside where it's going to ride on that case, and it gets some grease on the front. I'm going to just leave that reference point off there. I'm going to put it in kind of on an angle because there is a little ridge it's got to go behind, and then I'm going to set it so that that reference point is up top here. And I'll go to the parts tray and we'll get the tie down screw for that oscillation gear. And once you tighten that screw, just make sure that it's working fine. Alright, we have a bushing for the back, or a bearing, kind of hard to say. That bushing comes, it's not a bushing, it's a bearing. You remove the little tie down for the handle screw. Here's your bearing. Test your bearing. The easiest way to do that is just simply to put your fingers there and roll the bearing, make sure that it's doing that. And well, you oil the bearing. That's the bearing from the front of the gear. Just set those off to the side. This paper towel now is getting a little past prime. And again, I don't want to transfer dirt back to the parts that I'm cleaning either. So I'm going to take a moment here and spray this down and see if I can find that reference mark to show you. If not, you have to play around with it. And because the other one's on the low side, I would expect that reference point to be on the high side. There it is. At least they're consistent. So you may or may not be able to see this. There is a red mark on the inside here. And that red mark is marking the groove, this groove right here. And the reference mark on this one should be marking the tooth. So we're going to lather this thing up with some new grease after we clean it. And leave those two reference marks free. Pull this through, just like we did with the pinion gear. Pull it through to get the old greases off. Check the teeth, make sure they're all good. And now we can reapply the grease. Please, when you're doing fishing reels, use fishing reel grease. It's not that expensive. You can get it on online at multiple suppliers. I use Penn fishing reel greases and oils. You're welcome to use whatever you like, but make sure it is a fishing reel grease. There's your reference, red. I don't know again if you can see that, but there is a red mark there. I'm sure yours will have one too. On this side we have that point. And what we want to do is come over the top here. I think what we'll do, one more thing. Make sure your crosswind block is clean. Get some lube in that. Sometimes it's harder to get this thing behind the main gear, so let's put it in ahead of time. Slip that under. There's a little hook on it, so you got to hook it. And now we can line up the one with the other. And this is one you will know if you do not get it right, because your reel will jam. Oops, that was an oops. Let me put the bearing back in. Thought that went in too easy. Now let's try that. Red dot. Dot on the tooth. I'm pretty sure you're not seeing this. The good news is I am seeing it, so there we go. All right. We're going to have to put the axle shaft in before we can test this, but we should be good with that one. Again, there's a little trick there because it's an elliptical gear. The idea behind that is that there's certain stress points on the reel going up and down. And the elliptical gear tries to replicate the position of the axle shaft. And where the stresses are is where the contact tries to stay constant. I went to my parts tray. I got the little screw that's going to hold the axle shaft together. I'll try that a couple of times. Those of you that watch the channel know me and little parts don't play well together. But looks like we're about to declare success there. And now what you want to do is you want to hold the gear into that turn and make sure you have a complete cycle. You can see how that elliptical gear is oblong, almost football shaped. You need to hold the main gear so it has contact with the pinion gear and turn to make sure that it's free and easy without any disruption or catches. If it's stopping along the way, if you have an issue with the it's kind of a grinding almost, stop. Stop. Make sure that you set it right before you continue. All right, everything's done. This is oiled. We can close that case back up. Go to my parts tray and get those main pieces. The 3 gold pieces go outside. I think we determined that the bottom one of this has the screw going through it, so I think we better take that bump guard out at this point, out of our parts tray. Put it back on the reel. Slide it up, don't force anything. You break the bump guard, well, there's no easy way to put it back together again. It's sort of a Humpty Dumpty thing. You're going to have to go out and get another one. So save yourself the issue by getting it right. Alright, I'm going to take that first screw that I had in the other position. Doesn't matter which ones are in because we checked, they're all the same size. Put it in the bottom here to hold that bump guard in. And I can breathe easy now because that little V-spring that's under there did not shoot out. That's always a good thing. These are lessons learned over time. This is one of the reasons why I do the channel. I try to pass along to you what I've learned so you can do the service yourself, give your reels a second chance, and well, maybe avoid some of the pitfalls that I've sort of learned by experience. Like that setting of that elliptical gear there. I didn't have to go run around to the internet. I actually, first time that happened, I was kind of in a quandary. I couldn't quite figure it out. Couldn't find any reference material on how to set it. Logicked it out, saying, okay, if it's a low point here, it's got to be a high point on the other side. And then lo and behold, I noticed that there was that reference mark there on both pieces where they joined up, and well, the rest, as I say, is history. The case is on. We'll just turn it right now. Before you go any further, just turn it. If you somehow forced the case on and it was binding, that's a good place to test it because, well, you don't want to go put everything back together again to find out that it's still binding. All right, that's on. We have our 2 rotor washers underneath. Next up would be the rotor. Keeps moving on me as I go. There we go. We'll put it in. Remember, this was reverse thread, so counterclockwise to put it back on. Hand tighten it as much as you can. That way you don't risk stripping either the nut or the pinion gear. This one I can get with an open end wrench. Sometimes you're going to need a socket to reach over, but the slip is okay. And again, it doesn't hurt at any point to stop, give it a spin, make sure it's doing what it's doing or is expected to do, and then you can continue. There's a tie down screw that's next. That's going to hold the rotor nut from spinning off while the reel is turning. And we have the click ratchet. And we have those 3 spool height washers. These are the ones that come off kind of hard. They're kind of hard to get on too, but just push them on. Just like that. And now we can go over to the spool and just check on those drag washers. I'm thinking the way Quantum does, the way Okuma does things is that these washers may be felt washers. There's a lot of grease inside. That's okay. Felt washers deserve grease. This is a felt washer, and there's another bearing. So there you go. As we're keeping score of the bearings, we have another one in the spool here. Just in the bottom there. Well, we want to take a moment here and clean out the cavity just like below. Old greases and that do carry dirt. On a top drag reel, you're going to get a lot of dirt coming over the front of this because the line is coming down this way wet. And, well, you can oil or you can grease these washers. These have a lot of stuff on it already, so if you're tearing up these washers, if for some reason you've got this reel or an Okuma reel with, or a Penn reel or a Shimano reel, which all use felt washers in various models, if you're tearing them up, you can get Carbon Tex replacement washers, which are the hard washers, and they'll be more durable. If you're not tearing them up, don't race out and get them. You don't need them. I mean, engineers did design this reel. Their felt washers have been around a very long time, and if they're working for you, you don't need to replace them. That 5-sided clip goes next. We've alternated the washers with the metals, and the middle washer was the one that has the ears on it. And now this 5-sided clip sits into the groove within that reel, just like that. That's a retention clip. That's the only purpose that that serves. Let's put the spool back on. So Asante tells me this one was a UK import. I'm wondering what model it might be under the US. I'm assuming that it's all made in the same plant. It's just a different model. You know what they say about assumptions, but it's quite possible. All right, I'm going to tighten this down, make sure that it's all holding. There we go. Make sure your drags are holding. They are. Notice I have a little piece of line here. Let's get that piece off. Always a good idea to change your line when you're servicing your reel. I'm going to back the drags off now. Asante did that, and that's a good thing. You want to back off your drag washers when not in use. You saw these are felt. These have oils and greases on them. If you leave that clamp down, it's like leaving it in a vise. It's going to press all those oils and greases out, and the next thing that happens is your washers dry out. All right, one more piece here. It's a nice red and gold reel, nice color scheme to it. Doesn't do anything for the performance of the reel, but you know, fishing reels are a fashion industry. You gotta make them look pretty if you want them to sell. All right, tighten that screw up. Oil the handle stud. Oil the seam where that is coming in. Let's give it a try. Nice and smooth operator. I like this reel. Again, I'm not quite sure where the 8-ball bearings are. We saw several of them. Let's make sure that the bail is tripping. And I'm going to go back to the box because I may have this handle on the wrong side. I'll go back to my video. There's another reason to take pictures if you're not doing the one that's yours. You can make sure that you get it set up properly for return to your customer. Well, that's it. That's the Okuma RTX II 4000 size. It's a nice reel. I like it. I like the elliptical drives on it. They're nice smooth reels. They have a lot of ball bearings. And if you have the opportunity to get one, well, you may want to try that one out. To our first responders, our police, fire, rescue, and everybody involved in public safety, thank you for everything it is that you do. To everybody, enjoy the art of reel repair. Now's the time to get them serviced. Spring is coming, the run will be on. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing all of you a great day and fun on the water.